Welcome back to Take Off with Wellnesstory, the podcast that helps busy airline executives and their teams to achieve peak health and performance. In our last episode, Jim shared his life-changing experience with the Hadza tribe in Tanzania, revealing the simple yet profound lessons on the 4 drivers of health and how they can be integrated into our busy lives. Building on that conversation, we're thrilled to delve deeper into a subject that is of a critical importance to our health and performance, and that is how we manage our energy. How can we navigate the relentless pace of our modern life without compromising our health? To explore this further, we have the privilege of welcoming Michele Ashby to our show. Michele, with her diverse background spanning over 30 years in finance, mining, and leadership, brings a unique perspective on this topic. She has been recognized among the top 25 most powerful women in business in Colorado and the top 100 women in mining globally, for her work in training 1,000 women to get on corporate boards. Michele will share how her experiences have transformed her approach to life and work, emphasizing balance, sustainability, and the power of rest. Whether you're striving for success in the corporate world, leading a team, or simply seeking a more balanced approach to life, this conversation promises to shed light on how ancient wisdom can inform and enhance our modern-day practices. Enjoy! Michele, it's so nice to have you with us today. Welcome. So let's start at the beginning. You have had such an amazing corporate experience. You know, you are a leader in board governance, in diversity. You have had a career in finance, in mining. How does somebody with such a really kind of, corporate focus end up on a trip to Tanzania to visit a primitive tribe? Like what drew you to this journey?
Oh, it was Eric and Meads for sure. I was drawn by our leader who put this together and allowed us the opportunity to go visit the Hadza tribe. Because I'm in the mining sector, I've actually been to Africa about 25 times. So that part was not new to me, but I never had the opportunity before to really be with a tribe like the Hadza.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's great to see you, Michele. I mean, we
Hey,
were
Jim.
both on the trip together. And what was your kind of preconception of the Hadza before you got there, and how did that kind of pan out visiting them for the couple of days that we were there?
You know, I think we all had kind of ideas because Eric talks about that. And it was just fascinating to me to be allowed to be with them because I know that it's a very sacred thing to be with them. And especially, I'll tell you the thing that really, this is weird, but what attracted me was to sleep on the ground outside. It was the most scary thing to think about and also the most fun. And to go from the modern world of where we have all of these, all of these conveniences to a place where you don't. And so my thoughts were, as a woman, like, where do I go to the bathroom? Do I have to change my clothes? I mean, all those kinds of things, which are so different than what we live in our everyday life. And there's an attraction to a kind of understanding that. And also, I think the little kid in me wanted to go camping. Okay. So just to be for real.
It was pretty extreme camping, and if I remember, it rained that night, so we had the experience of the rainy season as well over there.
We did. But it was like we were 10 years old there. Everybody was squealing and running, and we're running in the wrong. Jim took us in the wrong
direction. I brought you in the wrong direction.
Like, turn around, we're going.
Well, it sounds like fun, but so how does the real experience compare to what you thought it would be?
It was, I went into it really open, actually, without a lot of expectations. I wanted it to be what it was, as opposed to have a preconceived notion and then judge it. So there were things that surprised me, like when we first got there and they took us up to the cave, and one of the tribesmen did all of this, like this whole performance showing us like how they make their arrows and had their bows and talked about and so he doesn't speak our language. Their language is in like kind of like that. We couldn't understand him. We had interpreters, but even without the interpreter, you could get the gist of what he was sharing with us. And then he whipped out this thing that they made in, that's an instrument, started playing, and it sounded like
a banjo.
Yeah, it sounded like a banjo. It was amazing. And so there were lots of surprises that way.
So we both read your blog on your trip to Tanzania, and what really was interesting for me is you mentioned that the Hadza women have this practice of sitting and sharing. And you say that it's almost like a deliberate act of energy preservation.
Right.
Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Jim went on the hunt. My intention was to spend time with the women because I'm interested in diversity, women's issues, and culture around that. And I wanted to observe how that worked. So, for one thing, I wanted to share is the men and the women have separate caves. They have separate fires. They do sleep together, as I believe in the huts, because they told us they do sleep together at night. So that's when they come together the most. And when we were around the women's fire, there's no chairs. Okay, you sit on the ground, a log, or a rock. And they sat on the ground and they talk. And I believe what they're doing is, because we couldn't understand them, sharing stories with each other. They don't have written, they don't have books. They learn by sharing stories. These stories among the women could have been about childbirth, could have been about, a neighbor. It could have been gossip for all we know, because we could not understand them. And the men were at their fire, doing the same thing, sitting around the fire. You could hear them chatting from time to time. And what you're talking about, my observation of the preservation was, first of all, I felt this calmness when I was there around them. There's like this kind of, like gear down.
Yeah.
No rush. You're quiet. And they would just go and, like kind of sit under a tree. And maybe they were starting to, carve out a baobab fruit. Or maybe they, at one time when you were all hunting, they brought out their beadings. So they are actually making, necklaces that they're selling to, I'm assuming, tourists. And we sat on the ground with them and helped them with the beading. And, they'd be like, show us the different colors, get this one, get that one. And we'd pick them up and, they were stringing them all very calmly. There's no yelling. There's no crying. There's no, I don't know, it's just really, really calm. And that's what I really noticed. And when I said they're preserving their energy, it felt so different from what we do in our lives, where we say relax. Well, relax might be sitting in front of the TV or getting a drink or even going for a cup of tea or something. That's not the case for them. They relax by leaning up against a tree in the shade or spreading out a piece of fabric on the ground and sitting on the ground with the children. And the children are even calmer. They're running around and they climb the trees and all that kind of thing. But they're not
Hyper.
they're not fighting over anything. They're definitely playing together, and they're very cognizant also and aware of their environment, and that they don't get too far away from where the adults are, and that they also are listening. I think that's the other thing, is it isn't also just the preservation, it's actually listening, because you are in the wild, and you have to think about your surroundings pretty much all the time.
Yeah. So I think the contrast between the men on the hunt, I mean, we experienced some really intense bursts of energy where these guys are running full out, they're tunneling in for hyena, some pretty stressful situations, but then they just de-stress. As soon as the stressful event is over, they light a fire, they sit around the fire, and they trade, I assume, stories about the hunt and probably joke, etc. So it's really those kind of bursts of stress and then de-stressing.
Right. And then what you don't know about that is that there are parts of the animal that are for the women. And they would take those pieces, and one of the tribesmen would show up in camp with us and bring those to, they would have it somehow in their whatever and hand it over to someone, one of the women, and then they'd start working. So they would start working on the process of cleaning, because they would get the intestines, the stomach, the hooves, and they would start preparing those. They'd also bring in, I believe, the did they bring in the fur, or did you bring that back? Do you remember if you brought the hide? Because someone was always working on the hide, and I noticed that it was either a woman or an older person that would be stretching the hide somewhere, either on the tree or on the ground, but every single piece was dealt with in regards to the animals, and everyone had a job.
Yeah, so I think my observation is that they're working. Like they're working consistently every day, and it's really about survival. They have to do these things every day, but they do it in such a way that there's a balance between their work and their rest. And I think that's where that energy preservation comes in, is that they're not like we are today, just constantly pushing through. They're taking the rest when their body naturally tells them, okay, it's time for a rest.
Right. And there are those breaks. They have natural breaks in between.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that, it seems to me, that's why their energy levels are so high, because they're managing them throughout the day, instead of, push, slam yourself with a coffee. And then by the time you get home in the evening, you're just dead tired. Whereas there in the evening, they're lively, they're singing, they're dancing by the fires. You can really see the difference when you do it properly.
What I hear, Michele, you saying is that when you talk about the day of the women, is that there is no multitasking, and there is always a conscious attention on what they're doing. So they're present.
Yes.
They're present in the moment. So that also that saves you the need for massive recoveries, because you are doing one thing. If you're doing beading, you're doing beading. If you are, I don't know, preparing the meal, you're doing that. And I think that as a mother who has a child who mirrors me immediately, I know that my mental state and my emotional state, rather than mental, my emotional state has such a big impact on the child. So that's why their children probably are so calm, because the mothers, they don't stress out about stuff.
Well, and there's a natural, we're all surviving, and their way of surviving is different than our way of surviving. We're surviving our lives as well, and we just have different models, right? We've had television and media and parents and all these other things that have come into play that play on our, our mental capacity, our dopamine, all of those kinds of things, whereas they have a very simple life. And it is calm, and they are more in touch with the earth. They're grounding all the time, right? Because they're always sitting on the ground, which has a different it has that what do we call it? It has a different effect on our energy,
we're supposed
regulation.
to. Yeah, exactly. We're supposed to ground the earth.
And their stresses are different.
Yeah.
The men are stressed because they've got to get the food, right? And I believe that the energy of the food is different. Like, I ate some of the organ meat, and I have to tell you, I had an immediate reaction to it, of a sense of much different energy than when I eat meat here.
Wow.
That's been processed, that's been brought to, and refrigerated and brought. How long is it between the kill and when I eat it?
Yeah.
It's a long time, and a lot of stuff goes on in between that can affect that. So I noticed that and felt a different energy. One other story I want to share, because I just thought it was so precious, was I noticed the chief, the little kids are allowed to go back and forth between the women's and the men's fire. And one of the little boys, who was the chief's son, and he was probably under 2, maybe about 18 months, he was over with the men, and the chief was talking to the other tribesmen, and he put his hand on his head. They were getting ready to leave. It was in the morning to go for the hunt. And he put his hand on his head. And after he instructed the tribesmen, don't know what he said, he turns to the little boy and he says, let's go. And, and he guides him over to the women's fire. And he stands there and he says something to the women, and then he kneels down and he says something to the little boy, and then he lets him go. And he went right to mom, right to the women. And now the women share in the raising, so he could have gone to any of the women. He goes there, and the chief walked away, and the whole tribe left for the hunt, the men did. And I just thought that was so tender to see how he modeled that, and how he took the time, and how he gently, he gently transferred the boy over to the mom, and he let him know, I'm here for you. I'll be back, and I'm going to go do my thing. You stay here. You stay here.
Yeah.
You say,
You're safe. Yeah, that's the other aspect that really strikes me, and when we talked about it with Jim as well, is that there's such a big role of community, the sense of community, and the sense of togetherness they share. That we don't have that anymore. Yeah.
And that could add into the preservation of your energy when you don't have to do it all on your own.
Exactly.
You do have helpers, you have support, you have other people who have your back, whether you're the men or the women. It didn't matter. They did rely on each other, and they, and the women, when we'd ask them some questions, they'd look at each other and giggle, and, they're childlike in some ways too, where they are, it's very pure, it's a very pure kind of human experience. I think that's why it's hard to absorb. It seems like it's taking time to continue to absorb all of these layers of things that we were able to share, and that we were able to observe with them, and kind of bring back and say, what can I do? I can't live like that, but what can I take from that and put into my life, or to share with other people that may be a benefit, which is what I think you're doing. And I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, I think I had the exact same experience, is trying to process it all, because it's for me, it was like a time machine, like really seeing what we may have lived like back, when we were evolving. Obviously you can't romanticize it, but how do we take those valuable lessons, and in a practical way, because we can't go back to living in a cave or living in temporary huts. But how can we take some of those learnings and apply them to our lives to make us more healthy and happy? Because they're like clearly happy people and quite healthy. So
I think we all just go camping.
More camping. Go into nature.
What else?
We got the work.
What else can we do? Like what are some of the things that you brought back with you? What changed in your day-to-day routine, or in your practice as a coach, as a mentor, as a consultant? What did you?
Well, one thing in regards to the energy is to have that consciousness around how to carve out time to just go and sit. And so in our culture, we meditate. And I think that's probably the thing that I liken that to make sure that I have time to do my meditation or prayer, if you will, and also to focus on my spiritual self, not just on the physical self. And then on the physical side, I came back and I started running again. I used to be an ultra runner years and years ago, and I haven't been doing that. I exercise all the time. But running is a different kind of exercise. And I was bummed that I wasn't able to take off and go on the hunt with everybody, because I didn't want to be the one that'd be like, oh gosh, we got to drag her back, or leave me behind, and then I'm the food. So I didn't take that on.
That was bigger.
Life decision.
So anyway, so it motivated me to look at my physicality. But the other thing too was we do have access to nature. And one of the things we've talked about is the ground. What we haven't talked about is the sky. And laying on the ground in the dark and looking at that sky under the baobab tree was an experience I've never had. And I think about it often, and I look up at the sky so much more now, because there's an energy there that is there for all of us, whether it's the sun, or whether it's the rain, or whether it's the dark of night. Yeah. There's a lot of energy, and I felt that so much when we were in Tanzania. I've never felt that before. It was just like washing over me, you
Wow.
know, the entire time it was. And so when the rain fell, it wasn't, it was, again, it was just an awakening, like and a
Mm. Like a
cleansing. And
gift.
yeah, it was so, such a gift. I was glad that we were out the night that it rained, because the other group didn't get rained on. So
That was nice too, I have to say. Getting
yeah,
through
even
the
more
night without getting
experience.
rained on. So
Yeah.
having both was quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's right. And I think, you know, one of this energy that you talk about is the sunlight and the impact that it has on our bodies, and being stuck in an office all day,
Mhm.
very rarely seeing the natural sun, and a simple thing like going out for a walk outside in nature is so powerful, and it's something that's accessible to most of us.
Yeah, and that you're absolutely right. And I didn't even like kind of notice that, but I've been outside walking way more since I got back. Even though it's wintertime here, I've like put my boots and coats on and I just head out. And because you're absolutely, I think that's a definite one that I picked up and I just wasn't very conscious of it.
Hmm.
So, Michele, for those of our listeners, viewers, the audience who would be interested in starting somehow better manage their energies, what would you say, you know, one or two things that they can start doing in their daily life to get to the point where they're a little bit closer to the Hadzas when it comes to energy preservation and balance?
Yeah, well, if they're like me, it has to be on their calendar. So there has to be something, whether it's an exercise that you're going to do, put it on your calendar, or meditation, anything like that. The other thing is to unplug, like leave your phone, you know, like don't get out of the room that has all the electric stuff in it. And if you can set up a space that has a minimal amount of electricity running through that room, through plugs and all that, unplug everything and sit and be quiet. I think that's good. The other one is, of course, to get outside and walk around, you know, spend some time there, but not on your phone, not, you know, not still attached to all of that kind of thing. Because, you know, I think we're used to, well, I've got to have my, you know, my pedometer to know how far I've gone. So they leave on the iWatch, or I need my Oura ring on to make sure that I'm, you know, tracking this and tracking that. Stop tracking your shit.
Right, yeah, just do it.
You know,
Do it.
yeah, really, like you stop that and, you know, put it aside for an hour. If you can do that every day and get yourself either to calm down or to do the movement, one of those is going to be hugely beneficial to you.
Fantastic. I think this is all really good advice. Get back to nature, notice the sun, notice the darkness of the night, notice the sky, notice everything around you. And yeah, I think we're so hooked on our devices. As you say, I was laughing when you said pedometer. I have my walking app, you know, that I tap on my phone because I need to know, like, why does it even matter? What matters is how I feel at the end of the day, or in the morning for that matter. How do I get up? Do I get up all, you know, tired and cranky, or do I feel like, yeah, I had a good night's sleep? And really,
we overthink things.
Yeah.
We overthink things, and I think unfortunately our devices, you know, keep our brains so garbled all of the time. I love the example of the Hadza women doing the beading, because you have to be perfectly present when you're doing that, because they're so intricate, the designs.
Yeah, and they were tiny. Oh my gosh, these beads were so small, and my big fat fingers, I was like, I can't pick these. It took me forever to try and figure out how to pick it up off the thing, and then we dropped some on the dirt because we're not that coordinated yet. They're used to it. And there'd be this other person would go and pick them all out of the dirt, all the ones that we had dropped. They don't waste anything. There is no waste anywhere, nada.
So I think it's trying to find those things, like you say, if it's meditation, whatever it is, walking in nature, where you are, you know, completely in your, you know, completely present.
Knitting.
So important. Just just switch off, like switch your brain off and do something that just brings you into yourself, and yeah, you can decompress.
Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge these days. It really is, because we are overstimulated. We're used to it. It is our norm. This is our tribe. Now we're all Zoom tribing, and so we are attached to all of this, and they're wonderful. It's a convenience. It's a beautiful thing, and at the same time, I think it's sucking the life out of us. And in order to maintain our life is where it's important to find the balance. It's important to be able to extract ourselves. And again, when I work with women, we put ourselves at the bottom of the list. We have best intentions, and then something happens with a kid, something happens at work, something happens with our partner, and or our community, and the next thing you know, oh, I'm too tired. I can't do that for myself. I'm just going to go to bed. That's what I'm giving myself. Instead of, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go sit in the sauna for half an hour by myself. I mean, we have a lot of choices, and maybe that's our problem. We have too many, but pick one.
Nice.
And stick with your promise to yourself.
Yeah.
Stick with your promise to yourself, because making yourself the priority is how, if you fix yourself, if you take care of yourself, then you can really do a good job taking care of others. Right. And we do have that benefit of having so many blessings in our lives to be able to do that.
Thank you so much. That's a brilliant advice. Thank you, Michele. It was absolutely fascinating to hear your side of the story after Jim's story about Tanzania. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the insights, and
we look forward to seeing you in person.
Okay, great. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.